Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. An extra hour of analysis and discussion of the topical issues of the week. Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very good evening to you, and thank you very much for making time to join us on this edition of Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90, which is broadcasting live from the Central Building here in the heart of our city, Kampala, along the Stowe Street. We are also live on our website, which is www.radio1fm90. While on that website, you click on the icon with the word Listen Live. We are also live on DSTV. Our audio channel there is 897. We are also live on the different radio listening apps. TuneIn, AfroMobile, UTV channel, Radio Garden, and Stream Africa. Those can be obtained from the Google Store of your smartphone. Download any, look for Radio 1 FM 90, and as long as you have an internet connection, you'll be able to listen to us. Today being a Friday, we'll review the major events of the week, but we'll be having a discussion around a thematic issue, that is the rationalization of government institutions. Now, Parliament has passed several amendment bills to merge, mainstream, or scrap some entities in what is seen as an attempt to stop duplication, save money, and also ensure efficiency. Now, initial reports indicate that about 2,200 people are likely to lose their jobs through this process, and that the government will save 900 billion shillings annually. Now, during the consideration of this process by Parliament, some entities were saved. They include the National Agricultural Advisory Services, NADS, Cotton Development Authority, the National Information and Technology Authority, NITAU, Coffee Development Authority, National Forestry Authority, and the Uganda National Roads Authority. And we also saw the National Forestry Authority among those saved, not forgetting the Uganda National Roads Authority, UNRA. Now, the MPs argue that these entities are still useful in their autonomous capacities, and therefore they should be retained to continue their work. Now, this process will continue next week, and among the entities that will be discussed is the National Meteorological Authority. Now, some stakeholders say that this entity is essential in light of climate-related challenges and issues to do with changing seasons and the weather forecast in this country. They say it's very important to guide this country because of its heavy reliance on rain-fed agriculture. Now, there are people who say that a lot needs to be done to reduce the size of government, to cut down on the huge public expenditure. In other words, they're saying there are so many other places that can be touched to be able to trim down the size of government. But the decision by the president to appoint new assistant resident district commissioners this week left very many people perturbed. They are wondering if the ongoing rationalization is motivated by unknown factors and not reducing on the public expenditure. So we'll be having a discussion around this particular issue. The panel: the Honorable Stephen Mkitale Birawa, economist, political scientist, who is the immediate former Blissa County MP, a proponent of national dialogue. Honorable Mkitale, you've been away for quite some time. Thank you for making time to be with us on the panel this evening.
Thank you so much, Kenneth Anderson. Good evening, Radio 1 Spectrum Special viewers and listeners. I'm happy being back at Spectrum after 3 whole weeks. When I was on ground. I actually left here when the debate of the taxpayers and URA were beginning, and listening from the ground.
You have rushed to the field ahead of 2026 too early.
You know I'm not standing at that level.
I'm not so sure.
But and I don't see space elsewhere in the current dispensation. But while there, you can really see a disconnect between the taxpayer and the tax collector, between the voter and the elected, between the citizen and those who are saying they are in charge. No wonder we may be creating a revolution unknowingly.
All right. Save the rest as we get deeper into the discussion of
yes.
The second panelist, the Honorable Sheila Kawamara Mishambi, the Executive Director, YASI. She represented Uganda at the East African Legislative Assembly, veteran journalist, and she's also behind Tembuzi Cultural Fun Park, which is around the neighborhood of this city. Thank you very much for joining us, Honorable Sheila Kawamara.
Thank you very much, Ken. Kenneth, It's always a pleasure to join the panel on Spectrum Extra and really to discuss some of the critical issues facing our country. So sharing views on where our country is going is extremely useful.
All right, thank you very much for always being available whenever called upon. Third guest, Dr. Godwin Ayesiga, Manager Research and Training at the Uganda Meteorological Authority. Good evening, Doctor, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, Kenneth. Thank you very much for having me on this special show. And I want to say good evening to our listeners. And I'm looking forward to engaging with my senior Ugandans on this special issue of rationalization.
All right. We expect the fourth panelist to get in here, the Honorable Godfrey Kabyanga Baluku, who is the State Minister in charge of National Guidance, Government of the Republic of Uganda. When he comes in, I'll ask him to actually speak to you. Let's begin by getting your views, and I'll begin with you, Honorable Stephen Mukitalebirawa. The issue of rationalization, are you among those people who has been complaining about the huge size of government? Finally, the government has decided to take on this matter seriously. Bills have been presented to Parliament. A number of them have been passed. Others have been rejected. That's where we are. Next week, another set of entities will be looked at through the proposed amendment bills, which will be discussed in the House. What's your take so far about what has transpired? Did you see this coming? Do you understand very well the rationale behind this and the background to this effort that is being undertaken?
Good intentions, bad implementation. Around 2013, after we had come in with the National Development Plan 1, as it was reviewed, those of us who had come from the 8th Parliament to the 9th Parliament found that there were challenges of aligning the budget to the NDP. There were a lot of consumptive areas, parallel, competing expenses, budget maximization agendas within the national budget, and failing us to align to the National Development Plan. It is from that time also that we realized that the matter of mergers, rationalization, and restructuring, I don't know why we are now ending up with only rationalization. So a lot has already been, so I can see if it was a prescription for a malady, I can already see an adulteration. And this was not coming alone, because also at that time we were questioning the political administration cost. How do we reduce it? I think that's around the time when Honorable Sila had gone to Yala. So we're coming up with those issues. It's also at the same time that Kenya had gone into had declared the constitution amendment. They were going for devolution, and we were beginning to question if our decentralization was working. And rightly for Uganda in 2005 constitution amendment, the issue of regional tier government had been constitutionalized, unfortunately not operationalized. So then we also found out that there was a problem of a lot of money being lost through procurement, and the debate of whether it was wise to bring back the centralization of the common user items and high value procurement could be done. So all these areas have been lost. We have now settled for rationalization. We are now discussing entities. We are missing the bigger picture. But the debate then was, let's reduce this parallel competing expenditures. Let's reduce this consumptive budget. We go into what the NDP talks about, with intentions of by the end of NDP 2 having middle income, but middle income transforming the citizens as well. No wonder today we are ending NDP 3, entering about to begin NDP 4, and we are talking of middle income without transforming. So I would want us to get back to the bigger picture before we just start punching a dead horse, because these entities we are punching are actually dead horse. They are at a policy level. How did we after rollback of the stage, divestiture, privatization, and liberalization end up, because that automatically meant you have a lean government. Because look at UNRWA. If you are outsourcing all your work, why would you have a big entity to supervise the already outsourced entities? So it's completely, you conceptually, administratively, and in all ways, you find that these the authorities and what you are calling it, you are now calling them agencies, they were not after all brought in the best interest. What was supposed to have come at that time was performance contracts. We were supposed to say no more to permanent and pensionable workers. We are supposed to reduce the red tape bureaucracy. We are supposed to introduce performance contracts so that if you deliver, you perform on targets, and you have a performance review, you are needed by government. And the private sector led growth we've been talking about, liberation and privatization, also did not mean abandon the regulation. So we abandoned the regulation. Instead, we started expecting the ministries where we had left the little paid people, the unfacilitated, to be the supervisors of the well paid. You remember a driver of KCCA earning more than a judge? Those extremes. Some of them actually, these discriminations reached a very high level. So what did it happen in the end? And by the way, remember, all these things have been done without merit and competition.
In a nutshell?
It has been a game of rewarding people. It's been a game of, we call it a patron-client relationship, the patronage as it were. And at the end of the day, this country has missed having the best brains of this country from different parts of the country at the top. No wonder, if you looked at the Equal Opportunities Report of last year, you will find that through this system, we have ended up with a few people who are on top because they have got the training, they have got the appointments. Not that the ones from Brisa who were before, I don't want to give again another example of oil, but by 1986, 85, when the UPC government did the Petroleum Act and we had the aerial survey, I had most geologists coming from my region. Now, after many years of training, and I have nobody there.
You lost interest in geology.
No.
What's your take on this process? We will be going back to Honorable Mukitale to dig deep on some of the issues that yes, but let's hear your thoughts first.
Thank you, Kenneth. I think Honorable Mukitale has really given us the historical perspective. And having been in Parliament himself at the time when they were discussing all these, creating some of these entities, he was there. So he gives us a clear perspective of where we came from. Why were these entities or agencies being created? It was actually to reduce the red tape and also to attract professionals. At the time, I remember even when I graduated, even as teachers, I graduated as a teacher, but we already had jobs in South Africa. We already had jobs
in Southern Africa.
Southern Africa, actually, the whole of it was taking Ugandan teachers. And the scientists themselves, all these professionals were being exported, yet we were being educated on the taxpayers' money. And so it was actually debated and agreed upon in order to let us, all of us, avoid this brain drain. Keep these professionals we've educated on Ugandan money here, serving the country. The agencies were created, but also to reduce the bureaucracy and the non-performance of the ministries at that time. I don't know whether the ministries have changed since then, but I know dealing with some of the ministries, I think they are still, they inherited what they had at the time and they are still practicing it. And a few of these agencies, we've seen them actually perform because one, they are highly paid, they attract I'm not saying that the people in the ministries don't have the brains. They do, because they go to the same schools, which is very unfortunate, because they go to the same universities, they qualify with the same degrees, sometimes better degrees than the people in the agencies. And yet you find if a commissioner is earning 3 million or a director 1.5, and you're supposed to supervise an executive director of an agency who is earning, let me not put them very far, maybe 25 million, or yeah. And how do you expect this director comes and is at the mercy of the person he's supposed to supervise when these agencies...
the one he trained, the one highly paid.
I don't see anything wrong with that. After all,
no, there is something wrong.
Being elected as a leader is service, not to be paid better.
No.
So let experts be paid better to do that job as you supervise
I can assure you, even the person supervising is an expert in his or her own right. Yeah? So, really, for me, there is a flaw in that, because government should have considered this. If you're going to attract the brains in the ministry and in the agencies, really, government needs to up its game. And the problem is not that we don't have the money, because I think we are highly taxed, and our money ends up paying, with all due respect, the parliament and the executive. That's where most of the money in this country is being spent. Because if you have 500 MPs who are supposedly supposed to, they're supposed to represent our views, but I don't know whether they represent us. Then you have 80 ministers with all their bodyguards, with all their sirens and all their vehicles. That's where we should start. That's where we should start if we are saying we are reducing government expenditure. It is at the executive level, it is at the legislature, it has gone down to the judiciary, the arms of government actually. These agencies, to me, most of them, I don't know whether they have done a clear evaluation of what these agencies do, their performance, and then we say one by one, you are non-performer, even we don't know why we created you.
But you see, you have a law in place that allows the president to appoint so many people as he so wishes, and maybe he's fulfilling the law. When it comes to issues of cabinet, the law actually says that he can appoint from within and outside parliament, with the consultation of parliament. Once the parliament approves the structure, that's it.
I don't want to question the powers of the president. Yes, the constitution gives him the powers. But at the same time, I think even logically, you need to say how much expenditure am I creating in terms of public expenditure vis-a-vis what service are they providing. Because to me, reducing an agency which is created, for example, I will give an agency, even the ones which we say were saved. I'll give an agency where I served on the board, the National Forestry Authority. At one time, we were losing the entire forest cover in this country, and at a very rapid rate. Despite all the challenges NFA went through, they have managed at least to sensitize Ugandans that we needed the trees, and we are seeing rain even in places which were turning into deserts. One of them is like Mubende district.
So that is okay to retain NFA. You support that?
Yes. Before NFA, we had the forestry department. I think the forestry department was one of the underserved departments. It was just a mere department within the Ministry, I think, of Environment and Water and Environment. And those those departments, because of being under-facilitated, they were not, I think...
they were not performing.
They were not funded, but they also facilitated the deforestation in this country.
Their work was to issue permits to have the trees cut down.
Exactly. But when we got an authority, at least we saw a change. We saw certain policies being put into place. Yeah? And so, for me, it is not the agencies that have a problem, but I don't want... Who do we apportion the problem? Mukitale here has said that when they were being discussed, there was a lot of things that were put into consideration. And it is those things that we need to assess as a nation.
All right.
Parliament needs to sit down and carry out an audit, a clear audit. I know they will say, yes, we did the audit. And not be emotional. These people are being paid so high. These people should go. These people should go back to the ministry. It's not about these people going to the ministry or the funds being taken to the ministry. Anyway, they want to go there. So the ministry shouldn't get excited.
Maybe the audit should have been done before the process began of rationalization.
I think we've been at this...
To avoid the emotions that you're talking about in Parliament.
But we've been... this debate has been ongoing,
For
I think,
quite
for the
some
last
time.
4 years.
4
or
years.
more.
Before
Yes.
COVID,
Yes.
we had this
Yeah.
discussion.
So I don't know how you can say there is no audit up to now.
All right. Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break. Good enough. We have somebody here in studio who is from an entity that will be considered next week. The National Meteorological Authority is also among those that the government wants to mainstream back to the Ministry of Water, Environment, where they should be housed. Let's go for a break. When we return,
His has not
we'll
cried.
hear from Dr. Godwin Ayesiga, who is the manager, research and training at that entity, to tell us how the process is being felt down there as Parliament prepares to debate their fate. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Extra continues after this break.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
You can't come to the Sheraton? Worry not. Sheraton will come to you. Order your favorite meal for you and your family at your home, office, or special function. We deliver breakfast, lunch, early dinner, snacks, cakes, and pastries. We also cater to weddings, bridal and baby showers, birthdays, anniversaries, and all your special occasions. Stay home and let's bring your meal to your doorstep. Sheraton Kampala is also available on Jumia Food and Glovo. For bookings and inquiries, call 0312 322 499. Email foodandbeverage@sheratonkampala.com.
Terms of business with Housing Finance Bank and meet your business needs with ease. Get unsecured bid bonds of up to 500 million shillings within 24 hours. That's not all. Housing Finance Bank is also offering other short-term facilities, including performance guarantees, advance payment guarantees, contract financing, export and import financing, invoice discounting, and so much more. Contact our trade finance team today on 0417 707 595. You can also call our contact center on 0800 211 082 or WhatsApp 0771 888 755 or visit any of our Housing Finance Bank branch nearest to you. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy. Housing Finance Bank is regulated by Bank of Uganda, and customer deposits are protected by the Deposit Protection Fund up to 10 million Uganda shillings. Terms and conditions apply. Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra live on Radio 1 FM 90. Keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0703-090-090. A topic of discussion today, rationalization of government institutions. We are looking at the process, how it has been handled, and how it's likely to affect service delivery, but also what we're actually missing out of the big picture that people have been talking about. I'm speaking to the Honorable Sheila Kawamara Mishambi, Executive Director, IASI. She did represent our country at the East African Legislative Assembly, and she is also behind one of the new cultural fun parks in Kampala here along Kampala Mukono Road at his Tembuzi. Also in studio, the Honorable Stephen Kitalabirawa, economist, political scientist, who is immediate former Blissa County MP. He's a proponent of national dialogue. Now coming on the mic is Dr. Godwin Ayesiga, Manager Research and Training at the Uganda Meteorological Authority. I've just actually established that actually this entity has already been mainstreamed back to the Ministry of Water and Environment following a decision by Parliament on the 17th. And all that awaits is a signature of the President to affirm what Parliament decided, or to actually reject it and send back the issue for reconsideration. Dr. Godwin Ayesiga, as the Meteorological Authority, how have you found this process of rationalization, and how your colleagues back, you as the staff there, found this process? How has it affected you?
Thank you very much, Kenneth, for that question. And I just want to start from building sort of a background for our listeners.
Yeah, the listeners also want to understand who you are and what
Yes.
you've been doing.
Exactly. That's why I needed to build this, so that we have our listeners with us as we progress in the program. So Uganda National Meteorological Authority was formed by Act of Parliament of 2012. And our mandate is to provide weather and climate information for use by stakeholders for national socio-economic transformation. And if you look at the sectors we serve, you will not be able to point out a sector that doesn't use weather and climate information. I'm not going to spend time to narrate all of them, but I will leave our listeners to digest this, because our service goes across. And so on the 17th of April, the Parliament of Uganda made a decision to mainstream Uganda National Meteorological Authority back to the Ministry of Water and Environment. But that, of course, that was after the chairperson of the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources, Dr. Emmanuel Otara, presented a report from their committee, and to provide some kind of context for our listeners, the committee recommended that because Uganda National Meteorological Authority provides a highly specialized service, there is no any other ministry of government that provides a service that is provided by Uganda National Meteorological Authority. And so they recommended that UNMA be retained as a semi-autonomous entity. I want to appreciate the committee, Dr. Otala's committee, for that job. And Kenneth, that's because the committee invited us from UNMA, and we sat and explained to them exactly what we do and how we do it. So they noticed how highly specialized meteorology is. And so their recommendation was spot on. However, when it went to the floor of Parliament, as staff, we think that if you can recall what Sheila was talking about, clear evaluation, it appears to us the rest of the MPs didn't clearly evaluate the value and the importance of Uganda National Meteorological Authority to the development of this country. And so it's clear that if that had been done, the decision would be different. And that's why you're saying now we are at the mercy of the president. But for us, what we want to do is to provide this information beforehand. Because this particular decision of mainstreaming UNMA is retrogressive in so many aspects. Let me just give you quickly a very quick example.
Please.
I'll start from home. That Uganda is a partner state to the East African Treaty of 1999. What that means is that we are bound by that treaty, which is an East African Community Treaty. And being members, we have to work with the policies that are passed, the resolutions of heads of states of the East African countries and the ministers of the different sectoral committees. And so one of the resolutions of the heads of state of the East African Committee was that all national meteorological and hydrological services of the East African countries transform to semi-autonomous entities. And that was way back in 1999. And so if you look in the East African community, for example, look at Rwanda. Rwanda transformed from Rwanda Meteorological Services to Rwanda Meteorological Agency. Then in 2012, that's when UNMA Act was passed, and it was operationalized in 2015. In 2019, the Republic of Tanzania passed a bill that formed the Tanzania Meteorological Agency, which is a semi-autonomous entity. Now, in one of the meetings that was held in 2003, there was a resolution that was made by the ministers of the Sectoral Committee of Transport, Communication and Meteorology that was appealing or urging the member states like Burundi, Kenya and South Sudan to expedite the process of transforming their meteorological services to semi-autonomous entities. Now, as I speak, Kenya has the Meteorological Bill 2023. And our friends, our brothers and sisters from Kenya and Tanzania were coming to Uganda to benchmark on how Uganda, the government, the current government, transformed the meteorological department into a meteorological authority. And so they were learning from us. So on learning from us, the Tanzanians were able to form theirs in 2019. And now Kenya is transforming the Kenya Meteorological Department to the Kenya Meteorological Services Authority. And so you can clearly see that Uganda had provided leadership. Now what has happened now, the decision of Parliament means that we are now taking steps backwards. And so we will be in the same group with our sister countries, Burundi and South Sudan, as countries with meteorological services that are not semi-autonomous. And so by any iota of imagination, you can see, Kenneth, that this particular decision of Parliament is retrogressive and very regrettable. And so, just like you mentioned, I would want to appeal to His Excellency the President to invite the board and the staff of Uganda National Meteorological Authority for an engagement so that we can explain clearly what UNMA does and save this country the embarrassment that is heading to.
Are you suggesting that probably the president does not know? I'm assuming that these bills and even the decision to do the rationalization was discussed thoroughly in cabinet, which he chairs, and therefore he knows what is happening.
Well, Kenneth, I understand where you're coming from. I don't sit in cabinet, but my understanding is that it's highly unlikely that cabinet has all that time to digest what meteorological authority does. I don't think they have that time, but I stand to be corrected. My understanding is that we need to be given an opportunity to clearly explain to the president, to give him more information, to support his decision.
All right.
He has served this country so many times, and this is one of them. Kenneth, you know that this country is grappling with impacts of climate change.
All right.
And so this is not the right time to mainstream.
I was going to ask you, apart from you saying that we'll be abrogating the East African Treaty, why should we be bothered by you being semi-autonomous and working independently? What will make it wrong for you to actually work under the ministry?
Well, that's a very good question, Anderson. I wanted to build on that. I started on the East African scale, but now I want to scale it up to a global.
Yes, let's try to understand your relevance, because I've had some people actually say that you may not matter so much. After all, one can even Google the climate and tell it's going to rain in this area, it's going to be hot. So why do we need you?
Well, Kenneth, is not as simple as you're saying it. So let me take you on the
test here on
scale.
my phone.
Yeah,
I can tell you whether it will rain in my village or not.
Kenneth, I want to save that discussion for another day. I want to stick to the facts.
Those are the issues listeners are contending with.
Yes. You see.
So explain to us why you think you're still relevant.
Now, let me take you to a global scale. I've just done the East African regional scale. So on the global scale, Uganda is a member state or a signatory to the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, which is a UN agency that is in charge of all meteorological services in this country.
So if you're phased out, we'll be violating those treaties under which we are. But I want people to understand, as an entity, what do you do on a daily basis that we are going to miss if you're phased out? Well, or if you're mainstreamed in the ministry?
Well, what do? We provide weather and climate information. Let me break that down, because we provide services on a different time scales. We have a daily. We have a forecast of very few hours from now. We have a forecast that comes on a 24-hour scale. That's a daily forecast. We have a 10-day forecast, which is very popular for the farmers. We have a monthly and a seasonal forecast. But we also serve the aviation industry. Kenneth, I want to inform our listeners that there is no aircraft that can take off or can land without weather information. And that's how critical it is. And it's just that, Kenneth, just like you said, you can do this on phone, but you don't know who is providing that information. You have no control over it. Yes? And so, but I want to save that for another day. Let me come back
we should assume that it is the Metro Authority of Uganda that feeds the internet with this information that we can easily access. Is that what you're trying to say?
I will come to that point, but I want to go back to the aviation, because you said, what do we miss? Now, the aviation industry is regulated by the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is an umbrella body that is in charge for the international air navigation. Now, I mentioned to you, Kenneth, that there is no aircraft that can take off or land without weather information. Now, that weather information should be provided by a service that is ISO certified. It's not that anybody can provide that information. There are standards, international standards. And so Uganda National Meteorological Authority is one of the authorities, one of government entities that is ISO certified.
All right.
It's ISO certified to meet the international standards. Now, here is the risk, Kenneth. Just a minute. Here is the risk. The risk is that once you mainstream Uganda National Meteorological Authority back to the ministry, it means that its legal framework has changed. And so we lose the certification, the ISO certification. And so we will not be conforming to the international requirements for air navigation. And that's a big risk.
All
you know, that has a bigger implication on all the sectors, including the tourism sector, because you'll have an issue in the entire aviation industry. We will not be providing the service that is internationally accepted.
All right, we'll be coming back to you, but let's hear from Honorable Sheila Kawamara. What's your take? Let's use the example of this entity and where we are. Dr. Esiga suggests that probably members of parliament do not understand fully what they stand for. They are now praying that the president looks at this from a deeper perspective and saves the country, if I may use his word. Are we making a mistake here?
Yeah. One, I think to me that one again, it's unfortunate that it has to be the only one great leader to save this country, who has to be explained to and understand. Actually, when Dr. Esiga was speaking, as somebody who has used those planes and been in situations where you really see the weather being unpredictable when you are up there, and then you're supposed to be landing and wondering whether the right information is being supplied to the aviation industry. To me, that one is very critical, and I think we need to be explained. And that is where I began by saying that we needed to have audits of these agencies and institutions to really understand what do they do, because we are not experts. Meteorological agency, if you ask the authority, if you asked 3/4 of our members of parliament, what do those guys do? They will tell you, those guys tell us the weather forecast tomorrow is going to be like this. Do we really need them? If I can Google, just as you said, if I can Google here and find out, oh, is it going to rain in Kabarole? Oh, Kabarole, it's going to rain.
Just for the record, I don't belong to parliament.
Yes, you don't belong to parliament, neither do I, but I think we know that one of the things that we have really excelled in is our parliament sometimes getting highly emotional and deciding to debate and even agree on things they do not know. I was in parliament, but fortunately not the Ugandan parliament. But I recall one time, because we had pigeonholes at parliament, and
to pick your information and your mail and
information and everything. So we had the pigeonholes where our information would be put. You go there and pick. Now the Parliament of Uganda decided, I don't know, Honorable Mukitale, you were there when they put your I think it was a password or something. They changed the payment system. And our members of parliament had a culture of pulling everything that was in their pigeonhole and dumping it. So their money those who couldn't read,
Their payment slips
their
ended
payment
up
slips
in the
ended
garbage.
up in the garbage. And they were looking, because they used to say, this information is too much, this is hopeless. But that is information circulated from these agencies, ministries,
And that was also
departments.
before the iPad.
Yes.
Every day you pick a full
Yes,
but at
yes.
least now more information is wide.
So,
Before that, you'd be buying fried cassava.
yes. So
and,
all the
you have the
information.
MP slip
And
wrapping the cassava.
Yes, and
Exactly.
the MPs are looking for, they are saying, but how come our money is not coming? Then they realize that they had actually thrown away their own pay slips. Yeah? So that shows you that the reading culture is terrible. And these MPs, the only thing they can, I think, they prefer is you call them and explain to them letter per letter. And most of them, unfortunately, I've dealt with some MPs in the current parliament. They come, you invite them for a session, which is information giving session, and they're asking, so how much are we being paid? And before they finish that session, they're running to another place. They say, you see, I have about 5 invitations where I have to go. And all they are doing is collecting allowances, which is very, very unfortunate.
Are you imputing
for-
that
for leaders.
meteorological sources?
All right,
so
not
meteorological-
some people. So you NAD is in it and UNRWA lubricate.
Those are your words.
Please conclude.
Those are your words, but really, we need to think logically and stop this emotionalizing national issues and really look at these agencies. Because if you're talking about 2,000 people that they are going to lose their jobs, to me, I'm not worried about the 2,000. I'm worried about the service that we are losing as a country. So if you talk about the billions of shillings, I think if we lost some of the critical people because meteorology failed to provide the right information, even be it just the information they provide. For example, I'm a planter, I'm a farmer. Yeah, I listen critically. Are the rains coming or not coming?
Yeah.
I know recently, because the rains came a lot in the last season, that was October, the September, October. Some farmers had refused even to cultivate, thinking now it's going to be a dry season. But they were assured that actually the rains were coming.
Yes.
And then people began tilling their ground. So it is very critical. And those farmers now, they are enlightened. They wait. What is meteorology saying?
Exactly.
That is very critical.
All right.
To me.
Honorable Mkitale, let's use the example of this authority. Are we making a mistake, or we can reconsider and have them as semi-autonomous, or to continue doing the work the way they have just been doing it? You had a passionate presentation made by Dr. Ayesiga.
First of all, my son, Dr. Yesiga Godwin, grandson of Headmaster Rugondo. My father was also a teacher. We are proud to have that we are people going to succeed us. The other day was Dr. Wavienda, his generation. The other day was another program with another doctor on an environment again. So even without Bunyoro University, we are trying. we are trying to be on the national map.
Just a few minutes ago, you were talking about was it nepotism or what? You want to say?
We are talking of equal opportunities, unity and diversity. We are talking of regional balance. So we are talking of entitlement and citizenship.
All right, so let's balance the boat on the authority.
First of all, before I answer that directly, two things.
First answer this directly, and then you.
First
we'll
of
go
all,
to the two
timing.
things.
If we are serious about the issue of mergers, restructuring, and rationalization, it should not be done when we are entering a campaign team. So one of the reasons it's going to fail is that people are already in campaign mood, and all these people managing these companies are saying they are the chief campaigners. So whom are you going to rationalize? Two, timing still. You know, initially when this idea came, as I was telling you, the history of 2011, 12, 13, we even formed PACOB. So this was also number one of PACOB of year one, where I'm a founder member. We were intending to
The presidential.
redirect Presidential Advisory Committee on Budget, which is now making almost 10 years. We were intending to remove money from where there is no quick return on investment to push it on the cash cows, the low-hanging fruits, the water for production, the tourism, the ICT and what. The areas are known, the value addition, the industrial parks. The president even gave the areas. So that's where we intended. So my worry now, post-COVID pressure, the economy has challenges. URA is not performing. The debt servicing is taking 30% of the budget. The homosexuals are saying no money for you. So the timing for me as an economist is not good. What all this we're using is very laborious. We're using a lot of energy to discuss a lot of entities when actually the proactive, preventive approach was supposed to take that time.
All right.
So that the savings we make are channeled to those much needed areas.
All right.
Right now, it is out of a squeeze. It is out of a squeeze. You know,
let's deal with the authority now.
You know, they say stitching time saves life. I wish we had acted that time. So right now we are, and that's why other people are saying, why don't you touch on other areas we know? Because instead of having the last 3 weeks standoff between URA, and URA is a messenger. URA is just a messenger. Those tax bills are given by cabinet, parliament, but you see URA Musingu is suffering. I met this man first with Kayura.
All right.
You are smuggling. So
all right, let's deal with the authority.
When I was the tax agent myself. So the point I'm making, let me tell you by the way, before I discuss.
You've already told us.
I would have wanted us.
Let's focus on it.
Before we discuss these entities which you don't even have money. The area which has money, the biggest money in Uganda, and why you are being declared.
We are going to get to that phase.
We are going to get to that phase. Start with merging UNOC and PAO.
We are going to get there.
Because I am from Blissa. This one you drive to Entebbe.
All right.
To PAO. This one you go to somewhere. They are not even in one building in Hoima. NEMA is. I would actually recommend, for if the worst came to the worst, this meteorological department works together with NEMA. At least they are closely related. The ministry is devoid of any resource. At least at NEMA, I had an uncle.
But even NEMA is also crying.
In the colonial days, the game department was in charge of both forestry and NFA.
NEMA is crying here. They don't also have money.
UA and NFA were once one of, because my uncle would come home. I'm the old man Muzei Siavi. He was handling both UA and NFA, and he was living in Udong. He was deputy to Mzungu. So I would rather NFA and UA becomes one
entity,
and then in NEMA and meteorology, because you are very close. Because in the current days of global warming, the climate change, we have failed to we are still on rain-fed agriculture, and we have failed to shift from that agriculture of that level to high tech. How can we abandon the only source of information? So for me, I find it rather a bit reckless that I know they are underfunded. They may not have the enough influence to talk to the. I'm not talking about that bribe allegation, because I want to still think my parliament is still a reputable institution. But I think they don't have, because we have this culture. Kayora comes to police, he gets all the resources. Jen from C comes to KC, he gets all the. But the one before, Katumba Wamala was fundraising, Mukwano give me a you know, this is where the problem is. So what we do in this in my bigger national dialogue and the PACOB area arrangement would be drop the budget to zero. What do Ugandans want in the budget? They want clean water. They want to schools. They want to go to. I was reading from Blissa 2 days ago that even 30% of Ministry of Health's money is not going for service delivery for health, is being shared by the managers of health sector. These are the areas we should deal with. Not just the debate has been, we have been put too much energy on agencies. Agencies are a part of a delivery mechanism. We start with policy. I started with policy. you do the planning, you go to the law. By the time you got the delivery mechanism and the budget, these are the downstream things. So the problem is upstream there, and that's where we should have put all the energy. The money we have in this budget now, 58 trillion. What does Uganda need the most? Not the names of agencies. The services, the earlier governments, post-independence, they used to say, to fight poverty, ignorance, and the disease. Finished. Not these very many words. Now we know that we need to add value to our agriculture. We lost cooperatives, we needed them. Those who have succeeded as in business and would even want to go into industry, they have challenge of lack of long-term, low-cost financing. We closed cooperatives. UDB is lacking money. These are the areas where the money should go, because when we rolled back the state under divestiture, liberalization and privatization, the private sector led was not regulated, and we did not incentivize it, because the money should have been going to the private sector led.
All right.
Instead, we have taken the money to the looters.
All right.
Actually, for me, to the extreme extent, I would even want to say some of these posts should have gone home without any payment, because they are actually the procurement in charge inside the trade. The 40% of the budget we are losing is going to the inside suppliers. Who are the consultants?
All right.
Who are the suppliers of this government?
Let's go for a break
They are
now.
the very people who are now pleading, I must be paid a period.
Let's go for a break now.
That
When
is
we
an
return,
impunity.
we'll be hearing the views of the listeners.
Have been put hostage by criminals who are looting the country.
We'll be hearing the views of...
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra live on Radio 1 FM 90, reviewing the major events of the week, but our focus is on rationalization of government departments. My guest, the Honorable Stephen Kitale Birawa, economist, political scientist, immediate former Lisa County MP, Dr. Godwin Ayesiga, Manager Research and Training at the Uganda Meteorological Authority, the Honorable Sheila Kawamara Mishambi, the Executive Director, IASI. She did represent our country at the East African Legislative Assembly, and we expected the Honorable Godfrey Kabyanga, the State Minister in charge of national guidance, to join us, but it seems it's going to be impossible. We have not heard from him, and we can't reach him at the moment. We expect you to contribute to this discussion, and please do share with us your views on the WhatsApp line 0703-090. Help us to shape the discussion here in studio. And if you send in a question or comment, I'll make sure that the panelists do respond to your issue. Now, gentlemen, Honorable Mkitale, earlier before we actually, but maybe even before we get there, let's go back to Godwin. This process, how many workers are we seeing that are going to be affected? The reason I'm asking that is because overall the government says 2,200 people are likely to lose their jobs, and one would be interested in knowing, are there people actually going to be affected? Have you been told that probably your services will not be required as you get back mainstreamed into the ministry? And is there going to be compensation? What kind of information has been provided to you, even as you wait for the president to intervene?
Thank you, Kenneth. That question I would want to think that when we look at the number of people who are likely to lose jobs, I think we lose the bigger picture. Because Uganda National Meteorological Authority is a highly specialized institution. And on the average, you have more than 95% being scientists. So you have this kind of human resource that's spread around all over the country. And all of them, especially those who are...
What do you mean all over the country?
We have weather stations in every district. I'll use that.
Every district?
Every district, we have a weather station there. Some of the districts have more than one. So what that means is that we literally have staff nearly in every district of this country. And all of those working at those weather stations are scientists. So regarding loss of jobs, we don't want want to look at it from that perspective. We don't see this. We want to focus on the bigger picture.
Which is?
The bigger picture is how do we look at the future without the Met Authority as a semi-autonomous agency? That should be the discussion. And in my view, Parliament would be discussing how to empower UNMA rather than mainstream it. Why? Simply because Kabalega International Airport is getting on board. And what that means is that you need more resources. You need more human resource. You need more equipment.
I was just reminded by somebody that actually airports can use radar to do what you're doing now.
The radar doesn't provide what is required for. The radar is just an equipment that is facing.
Can I give information as a procurement person? Actually, and also my experience at Parliament, we stopped getting funding for some radar because we realized that a radar right now in the modern days, even according to ICAO, must fit both meteorological, civil aviation, security, and other consideration. So somebody wanted to give us a radar without looking at other. Security must be there.
Exactly.
Meteorology must be there. So it's no longer the issue of just aviation.
To the aviation industry, we provide a whole folder of information, including temperature, pressure on the runway, temperature on the runway. You can't get that information from the radar.
So you have a weather station at the airport?
We have a weather station on the touchdown.
All right.
We have a whole fully-fledged station that compiles that information and packages it and disseminates it to Uganda Civil Aviation Authority. And so the radar is only one tool of what we use, and it cannot work on its own. You need human intervention. In fact, the information that the radar sends down needs to be decoded into something else. It sends down, if you would like, it will send down an image. Now, what we want to use the radar for, actually, I like the listener who has sent in that information. We are going to use the radars to improve on the real time or the nowcasts and convert that information into an application so that we help our Ugandans access this information in real time. You'll be able to see that over Kawempe or Wobulenzi, it's raining. So it cannot work in its own on its own to serve the aviation industry. And so that's what I'm saying, that the conversation that we would expect is that how does this country empower UNMA to meet the demands of an economy that's growing every day?
What kind of empowerment would you want?
Of course.
At the moment, what are you lacking?
Well, we need more equipment. We need more weather stations. And I can tell you, for example, you have seen cases where it rains here in the city center, but when you get to Wandegea, there's no rain. That is telling you that we need more observations.
We have also had situations where you have told us that it's going to rain and it doesn't.
Well, that's a nice one, and that is what I'm trying to tell you, that it will rain here in the city center, but it doesn't rain in Wandegea. If you are in Wandegea, you will think that it didn't rain. Now, what we are trying to do, and that's why we say we need to be empowered, is that we are trying to reduce on the scale of our focus so that we forecast at the smallest scale. We are now preparing for the parish development model. We want to issue our focus at the scale of the parish so that we support the initiatives of government. And so that's why I'm saying that the discussion now should be, how do we empower UNMA to provide the highest quality of weather and climate information that's required to drive the socio-economic transformation that the government is speaking about. And clearly, Kenneth, you know that if UNMA is empowered, then you have a reasonable basis to argue that, we have what it would take, basically, to support the agriculture sector. For example, you had Honorable Mkitale talking about how this country is a rain-fed agriculture in nature. And so with that kind of agriculture, what do you expect? You need high quality and accurate information for our farmers. And so it's not the right time to. I think, and I've said this before, that we need to review this decision that was made by Parliament, and look at it in a different, with a stronger lens, and perhaps find a way of reviewing it. Otherwise, it's strongly retrogressive.
All right. Honorable Mkitale, let's go and look at the entities that were saved. During the debate in the House, MPs said that we still needed these entities actually to continue with their work. National Agricultural Advisory Services, NADS, Cotton Development Authority, National Information and Technology Authority, NITAYU, Coffee Development Authority, Dairy Development Authority, National Forest Authority, Uganda National Roads Authority. Is there merit in actually retaining some of these entities, Honorable Mkitale?
You know, I'm no longer a politician seeking votes, and I hated being called a politician. But being as an elder who is living with the community, if we had a referendum and asked the citizens and asked the taxpayers and the voters the relevance of these institutions for the years they have lived, the answer would be different from what Parliament is saying. Because if I told UNRWA, without the Chinese contractor, as they celebrate 20 years to make the Ulisa Road, they cannot. So when you have a highly motivated, a well-paid agency, it should translate into a state participation. We should see local content. We should see reduced cost of doing business. We should see issues of making the country better. And that's why, for me, I was adding on them PAO and UNOC. Because if you have $20 billion going to be expended for the last 3 and another 2 years to come, in Uganda for the first time, I would want to know the linkages between this big project, like oil and gas, and tourism. I would want to see, in the spirit of the oil and gas policy, that we are creating cross-generation equity, we are diversifying the economy, there is interagency coordination, there is linkages to other departments, there is state participation of all other agencies, that you are mindful of the money, since there is squeeze in the other part of the economy, that you are mindful of the recoverable cost so that it is not too expensive. You are mindful of the environmental challenges and building capacities. But the moment you miss out on that, then you are very fast in trying to say, PAO is alone, UNOC is alone, moving up, one is running to Entebbe, another one. Then we may make a same mistake of Sonangola, where the daughter of the Santos ended up in charge of a more powerful national oil company than even the Bank of Angola, and no wonder. The daughter is now a wanted person globally for money laundering and all sorts. So what I'm saying, NITAYU, very good intention. They have done some work. But what is that we can do to make sure that wherever it's going to be put, the very resources, if they had been put, remember at one time, by the way, when we divested, we stopped this projectization of the country, where you would find the ministry person. I had an uncle in the Ministry of Water who had left geology, who had an IDRC Canada Land Cruiser and had a Pajero from another project. But the PS did not even have a vehicle. So at that time, projects guys in government were the powerful people. Project. But the ministry had nothing. And that's why it is wrong to have these so-called authorities and agencies, which, by the way, I remember a time we created the Heart Institute and Cancer Institute. We are looking for funding. So why do you say it's difficult to fund the cancer unit, which is so important, and the Heart Institute, where I even participated in making sure these entities came into place? But my argument was, why don't we put these resources under the same existing Ministry of Health, under the same, and it's good, the minister now at that time had taken over as Director of Health Services. You deny the money, the ministry, you give it to an authority. It does not make sense. Let us agree that all these Ugandans, you go to the Directorate of Petroleum. The guys, the Maringas, sort of mention names, who trained the people, are starving in the ministry in Amber House there. And the guys who went to these so-called powers are swimming in the money. And we don't even have a bonding. Because ideally the government would be saying, a person who has benefited from this, at least have somebody serve your country for 10 years before you move. Now the oil companies have depleted all of them. Government has sunk a lot of money in them. Specialized education, which the Bagunga and the Bacholi, the Bunyoropo are denied the training, and they are the ones coming out as most qualified to take the big. All this is impunity. All this is the kleptocracy of the highest order. For me, I am saying, if we took my approach of national dialogue, would have used the Magufuli way in Tanzania. You people, if you know you join the government service and you're a supplier, resign and go. So you give them an amnesty force. You say whoever is a supplier, first of all, in a private sector led, as we did agree, government is not supposed to be the biggest employer. Business is in the private sector. Ask Sheila, since he left politics, she will tell you now she's about to announce she's powerful in private sector. Me, before I came to parliament, I was better off than when I went to become poor in parliament.
Don't send if
I would encourage what we would do. I think this was done in Malaysia and Singapore. People were encouraged to leave government job, trained by government, given private sector skills and private sector funding. In other countries, you'll find that the IFC of the World Bank, the private sector funding money, is funded by government to help you to go and add value to the small industry, to go and, But in Uganda, no wonder that becoming a politician, you can become rich overnight. That, it is wrong. Money should be with the Mluanas, with the Sembules, but in Uganda. So the fact that now it is very lucrative to be in politics, it is very lucrative to be in it means the stealing. It's actually, it is just a sine qua non in economics used to say, sine qua non. It's just a confirmation. It's a manifestation. There is a lot of idle money in the government. And unfortunately, in our dialogue where we say with national values and ethos, if you go to Chigorovia in Bulisa and you don't put up a big house, this man works in a big, and he has no money, so you look a fool. The one who looted yesterday and is doing well is the one who respect. But you see, whereas you are living in those gigantic houses, which you are trying to make in 5 years, unlike some of us who worked for 30 years in private sector, the health sector is shrinking. There is no medicine in health sector, but for you are putting up a big house. There is no fees, which didn't charge and obote for you are driving in Pencon. So the very resources, the economy is reporting economic growth for the last 30 years, but that economic growth is in the hand of looters. The real citizens, the voters I'm talking about, the taxpayers and the citizens. And that's why I started by saying, be careful. We may be awakening the taxpayers who are beginning to question, why do we pay taxes anyway?
All right.
If we don't get service. And you may be awakening the voter. Why do I vote these people who go and become rich very fast? You may be awakening the citizens to say, our leaders legitimate and relevant? So it's a wake-up call. Let us do rationalization, mergers, for the sake of putting money where it was supposed to be in the first place. Because now it is there for looting.
We have comments coming in from the taxpayer. Mr. Tuyagenda writes in and says, don't you think if we didn't have NDPs and leave it to decentralized planning with coordination from the executive would cause better development? I say this because NDPs say the obvious at minimum. I think we need to work hard to have what they call a plan. That's Tuyagenda there, suggesting that what you were saying about NDP moving into NDP3 and so forth does not probably provide the best reflection. Restructuring government departments and agencies, to be honest, government should begin with political bodies and positions, e.g. cabinet ballooned the parliament. Who do the 527 MPs represent when only 20% of the MPs add value to legislation? Then RDCs with an LOC 5, COW, DPC, DISO in the district. Do we really need any RDC in this country? Of course not. Of course not any. The bottom line is most of the wasteful expenditures happen with the political wing. And then we have a comment. UNUMA has operated independently, but what's the value addition to Ugandan at outcome level? And why is it hard for them to operate under the ministry? Because we are trying to reduce on the costs. Let the gentleman give one justification for them to operate independently, just one statement. The meteorology guy argues as if the department will cease to exist when mainstreamed. They will still provide the information in the mother ministry. That's a comment from Davis there, who thinks you can still do the same even when you are in the mother ministry. Good evening, fellow listeners. Here we once again are grappling with the misinformed exercise of allowing politicians to try and manage professional technocrats, a recipe for disaster. Meteorology, just like climatology, is a complex and sensitive aspect of natural sciences, impacting on sensitive areas such as food security, aviation, etc. That should be shielded from the clowning under an informed, bloated house as exposed, which has exposed itself to be. These mergers and other sensitive streamlining activities, including tax management, need to be informed by business specialists and academia that we are not short of. If the issue is cost cutting, that house should be dramatically reduced in size and wasteful spending. Let us not mess around. Let us not mess around with sensitive issues that will affect our country and our security. That's Jeff listening in from Nakawa. Grace in Anthony writes in and says, "Good evening, Spectrum Extra. I believe that the leadership is a gift, not by power. And I know that our president, with his wisdom, will digest that debate and scrutinize those agencies that those that do not do he says agencies that do less job if necessary." That's what Anthony is actually saying. The president will be able to look into the details like Dr. Yesiga suggested and come up with a solution. Grace in Mukono, each entity should be discussed based on its setting up mandate. URA was set up to have a streamlined tax collection. Shall we always need such approach? Yes, UNRWA was set up to enhance procurement of road contractors to handle the backlog of dilapidated roads. In other words, UNRWA was supposed to work itself out of employment. If we still need it, then it has failed in its task. Then we have another comment. The saying goes, a load of war cannot be a load of peace. The person who oversaw the balkanization of institutions cannot have the right to forecast, to oversee their coalescing. That's another point there. I need your guidance. The discussions don't be skewed to mean that ministries are designed to underperform. Yet at another moment, you say ministries were underperforming due to underfunding. What if we give ministries the money we give to the agencies, and the ED of Uganda Meteorological Authority becomes the minister or the permanent secretary? That's another comment there. You need an expert at the top. Will that help the ministries to actually work? Secondly, before the enactment of the Meteorological Act, when they were still under the ministry, how was the situation with aviation? Were we not flying then? This person is asking. Then we have another comment. We are the objectives of rationalization of the government agencies. What are the objectives of the rationalization of the government agencies? It is aimed at reducing costs of service delivery. Is it aimed at reducing the cost of service delivery? The need to rationalize should be premised on the cost benefits analysis of all those agencies to provide informed decision making rather than vague, subjective and arbitrary considerations whose ramifications might instead negatively impact on the country. That's Honorable Eresu John with that contribution from Kabermaido. And we have another comment. We have another comment. I think we spend billions investing in Nosesco than actual challenges facing our people. Let's walk away from spending the little resources we have to consume Western technology as we drive our economy to perpetual debt. I am an advocate of organic growth. Let's stop borrowing. That is Elias Bishweko, who is listening in from Igara. And we have another comment here. Good evening, Kenneth. Listening to the discussion, all the entities are relevant, but it takes a leader to make a decision to rationalize. This situation where all options are correct, but you still, this is a situation where all options are correct, but you still have to choose one or two options.
Yote
Well, those are the
mzuri.
comments that are coming. Let's begin with you, Dr. Ayesiga, and then we go around the table for responses about the comments that have come in from the listeners. Dr. Ayesiga.
Yes, Kenneth, I want to thank our listeners for all those very good comments. And I will start with the one that came from one of I think, a listener from within Kampala, who was asking whether
That is
UNMA,
Davis.
Yeah, Davis, whether UNMA will not cannot operate under the ministry. Now, I want to remind Davis that we were there between 1977 to 2015. We were operating under the ministry, and those who were there then can tell you, because I don't want to blow my own trumpet, because our users, the users of weather and climate information, will tell you how we have improved in terms of the quality and the accuracy of our forecasts or our products. And of course, I want to say that we do understand even the countries that have the best machines, like the UK, for example, they have the most powerful computer that does the forecasting. They still sometimes get it wrong. So you're dealing with the atmosphere that's extremely unpredictable. But whether we can operate under ministry or not, I want to say we can operate under the ministry. But we know globally that the mainstream public service tends to be bureaucratic. And I want to be quoted clearly. I'm not saying that I'm not saying anything that undermines our public service. It's global. If I could give an example of the UK, they have the mainstream public service, but they also have agencies, and those agencies were formed right from 1988. At the moment, I think nearly about 50% of the public servants are in semi-autonomous agencies, and they did that to improve on the efficiency. Now, if you look at weather and climate information, it requires a high level of efficiency. You need fewer layers of authorization so that you can deliver, before you deliver this product to the end user. If we see a storm that's approaching, we don't have to go through all those many layers to get approval before we can issue an alert. And that's why we are arguing that it's important that we remain semi-autonomous, that we are smaller, we are more efficient, we can deliver this information as quickly as possible. Now, there was another question that was asking, before the authority was formed, weren't people flying? I want to say yes, they were flying, and they are still flying. But the caller needs to remember that the International Civil Aviation Organization keeps on changing the guidelines. Now we are using the Annex 3. Annex 3 has different requirements. One of the key requirements is that the provider of weather and climate information has to be ISO certified. And I did mention earlier on this show that one of the few government institutions that is ISO certified is UNMA. And we are ISO certified for that purpose. So the idea of saying that before the authority was created, people are not flying, I want to say that ICAO keeps on changing the requirements, the minimum standard, the minimum international standards that are required of a provider of weather information for international air navigation.
All right, let's hear from you, Honorable Sheila Kawamara, the responses that came in from the listeners, but you also need to have a say on the entities that were saved. Somebody here actually sending in another message and saying, good evening, Kenneth and the moderator and people in studio. Does taking back UNIMA under the ministry waive your responsibility and expertise to forecast weather? If there is any authority or agency not to rely on is UNIMA, Uganda should actually sue you for making them carry umbrellas on sunny days and leave them home on rainy days. Parliament, RDCs and politicians too should be downsized. Then we have another comment here. The first about UNRWA, actually, it is just a procurement agency for contractors, consulting supervisors, and consulting supervisors firms, period, which can be done in the ministry. Those are comments coming in from Goto there. Another one here. Spectrum Extra, I agree with the Honorable Mkitale. take example of Karamoja. If instead of creating districts and constituencies in Karamoja, government took water for production, would Karamoja be the same? As usual, government is providing answers for wrong questions. That is Robert in Kumi there. Generally, the feeling that is coming in from the listeners.
Can I
You want to go first?
Yeah, I want to go in first.
But let's go for a break.
Go to raise a very important point.
Let's go for a break now. When we return, we'll continue reflecting on the comments that are coming in from the listeners as we continue looking at this topic of rationalization of government institutions that is ongoing. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Extra continues after this break.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
All right, thank you so much for staying with us. This is Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. Our topic of discussion today, we are focusing on the rationalization of government agencies, which is an ongoing exercise where government wants to address duplication, save money, and also ensure efficiency. And that process is going on with the amendment of the laws that created some entities where they are repealing some, mainstreaming some, and actually merging others. Before we went for the break, we had some comments that were coming in. And Dr. Godwin Ayesiga, you actually wanted to respond on one issue that had been raised by one of the listeners, Goto, where he actually talked about how it is possible for you to actually provide the same information even when you're still under the ministry. I just need to read it out clear there. He says, good evening, Kenneth and the moderator. Good evening, Kenneth and the panelists. That's taking back UNUMA under the ministry. Waive your responsibility and expertise to focus whether, if there is any authority or agency not to rely on is UNUMA, Ugandans should actually sue you for making them carry umbrellas on sunny days and leaving them at home on rainy days. Then he says, Parliament, RDCs, and politicians should to be downsized. Actually, the name is Robert. Robert is the one who actually sent in this comment. Very quickly, how would you respond to him?
Well, thank you very much, Robert, for this good question. Now, first of all, to address this question of whether I'm being mainstreamed will take away the provision of weather and climate services.
Your responsibility.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Even if we are mainstreamed back to the ministry, we will still provide weather and climate information. But the point is that the nature of our service is kind of a fragile service. In other words, we do this on time. You cannot wait to send out an alert. And what I said is that globally we know that the mainstream public service tends to be humongous, and it has several layers of approval. And so we want the Ugandans to continue benefiting on our quick response when we see all these impending disasters. We want them to have this, when they need the information, it's readily available. We don't have to wait for several layers of approval. All we want to retain is efficiency, to serve our Ugandans more efficiently. And the other question was he's running Ugandans to sue us. One of the challenges
He's actually saying Uganda should sue you.
Yeah, yes, one of
Your information is also unpredictable.
I started from this perspective, Kenneth. There are two. Let's look at it from two perspectives. One, where does he get the information from? Kenneth, when we were starting this show, you did mention to me that you go to Google, pick weather and climate information and use it. Who is the provider? Do you know where that comes from? Do you know the scale at which it was?
There's a satellite somewhere.
Who owns the satellite? So it's
just to be fair to the young man. The heat wave we had yesterday, the last month, you cannot blame it to meteorological department. But the rains, the failed seasons.
The issue is
I am coming to that. The failed season cannot be blamed. what it actually tells you, it is a confirmation that it is getting more complicated with global warming and climate change. And therefore, for us who are poor countries, we need more sophistication in technology. We need more training. We need more staffing, and so that they must be built.
How come you didn't tell us about
Now
it?
we are blaming the victim.
But of course, you hear what Honorable Mkitali is saying. That is exactly what you need. Rather than thinking about mainstreaming the authority, empowering the authority would be the way to
They are
go.
the most deserving, actually,
Yes,
in terms of budget.
exactly.
Dubai was
So-
being taken away.
By flooded,
Yes.
with all the investment.
Yes.
And the technology.
In Dubai, it was different. They were trying to create rain, and they created, and it overrained.
But the point is,
We're actually more vulnerable than the powerful countries.
Yes.
Who can actually use AC when it's very hot.
Yes.
Who can adjust, we are more
And
vulnerable.
no
That's why
irrigation.
All right.
we are bigger victims of this global warming and climate.
All right.
But Kenneth,
In conclusion,
I just want.
Preparations and
Thank you very much, Honorable. Honorable is foresighted. Is seeing where this country should be heading to. But to answer my brother here, that the point is, where do you get that information from? The wrong information you're talking about. We want you to use the information that's generated by UNMA. If you have information generated by UNMA from our own source and it's not accurate, then we take responsibility. And we are working very hard. We want to sue all providers of weather and climate information in this country who are not authorized. They don't have the mandate. And so you can see we are taking blame of another provider who is not known. So it's important that Ugandans, when you're using weather and climate information, have an idea who the provider of that information is.
All right.
If it's from UNMA, we'll take responsibility.
One last comment coming for you. Thank you for the program, Anderson. Governments world over, once they chart a route and stay on it for a while, it's very difficult to change like this government. Abandoning it becomes extremely difficult unless there is a rupture. That's a sudden change of leadership, like from UPC to NRM, Uganda, or Labour to Conservatives in the UK, or even those like the meteorological one may not actually change how it shall run. It will stay, but the PS will replace the board. ISO certification will still survive. That's a comment coming in from Pat. Then somebody says the meteorological representative delivering information quickly only needs changing rules, not the agency. Then somebody says laying off, say UNRWA engineers, they will still be employed in the wider economy. That's growing the private sector with experienced workforce. That's a comment from Goto. Then I think that those are the comments that are coming in so far. But Honorable Sheila Kawamara, let's look at the bigger picture, even as we move towards the end of this discussion. After all this discussion we have had and what you've heard from the people saying there, do you think the real reason behind this exercise is to save money, is to streamline service delivery? Are we likely to see that at the end of this exercise?
I think, to me, saving money, we know where the money is and we know where the money goes in this country. So it is I don't know.
Me and the other listeners out there do not know. Please
know.
tell us where the money goes. Where does it go?
You always host here people, they tell you where the money goes in this country. And we know it.
Majority of people who
So
sit
if
here will
we
tell
are
me
to-
where the money comes from.
For example, one time I was advocating that what we needed in this country was not a parliament of over 500 parliamentarians.
All right.
What we did in this country is each district, we decided to blot the number of districts. When I went to primary school many years ago, we had 31 districts in Uganda, and I knew them by heart. We had the 10 provinces under a president that has been classified by, I don't want to.
We had
mention-
provinces.
We had provinces in this country.
My
Yes.
headquarter was
And-
in Port
and there were
and
10
the governor was called Ozo.
Yes, and also.
He wouldn't fit in the Land
And
Rover
he
because the
used-
stomach was.
Actually, he used to spell his name as
Ozo.
Ozo. If you ask him to spell his name, it
My
was
name.
Ozo.
So,
I saw him in primary.
Yes,
Mm.
I remember that guy. So, really,
were things better than now?
I think in terms of service delivery, yes. Only that we were again fewer human beings. I think we were about 8 million Ugandans or something. Now we are 44 plus. So all we need in parliament is representative. So You don't need every county, every village sending a parliamentarian. In the East African Parliament, we send 9. Do they represent Uganda? Yes or no? I was in Parliament and I represented my country. So this idea of saying even we can get 2 parliamentarians from each region of Uganda, the north, the east, the west, and we have how many? 16 parliamentarians. They will do an effective job. So we don't need a bloated government, in at least at the top. Let's consider the ministers. Do we need 80? No. Do we need 500 parliamentarians? No. That's where our biggest budget is, not these agencies. To me, the agencies, even the ones they have saved, I would say yes. We need the ones they have saved, and we need the others that are being sacrificed in the name of either misinformation, ignorance, because we don't know what they do. For example, I would say many Ugandans would not know what the National Information and Technology Authority is all about, because I would wonder, now this one, is it the same as UCC? Because many Ugandans will say, I know UCC because it controls the data, and they will switch us off if we say bad things, Facebook will go. So we know it is UCC.
So in other words, Nita, you should have been merged with UCC.
Possibly, because if we don't know what they do, I would easily say, I think this one needs to be merged with UCC. They do the same thing. But actually, if I read deep on what the National Information and Technology Authority is all about, I would say, no, we need it. Because this is a country that is so below standard in terms of information and technology. Other countries have moved on.
Yes.
They are on AI. Here we are still thinking about analog. Hey, you see my phone, this community. No, people have moved on. They are doing things now by AI.
Internet is a right.
Yes? Internet is a right. Everybody has to have internet because you can't survive without it.
For you are paying tax, not asking.
And here it is a privilege.
Yeah.
Mass transport is a right.
So we need
Public
all
service
these
is a right.
agencies, and I would advise all our
Education
parliamentarians,
is
before you start saying this agency should go, this one we don't need it, engage the people in these agencies. Don't look at their salaries. Because some of us, when we are like, you mean this person gets so much money? Convert it into $. These days, don't think in Ugandan shilling. Just say, how much is this? And how much would this same expertise be paid in a different country? Because I know some of these, of course, some people will say, if they want, let them go to those countries. But we lose as Uganda, because as long as you're going to educate, pay tuition for these scientists, and then say they can go if they want.
Yes.
Then why do we?
Can go and
Then why are we educating them? I think we should fight so hard to retain all the brains we can in this country. And for me, looking at, for example, Coffee Development Authority, with all due respect, because I'm also a coffee farmer, I know the varieties they have developed and given to us to plant, and we are seeing the results as a result of researchers. Nakori, I think it's Nakori, the one which does, Nakori, the National Coffee Research Institute.
Okay.
Yes, they do a lot of research to create new varieties.
And coffee is one of our leading exports. So,
and we have really improved as farmers because we know that in case my coffee has a problem, at every district there is a UCDA person whom I can call, and that person will give me expert advice.
So NITAU, tick. Coffee
Yes.
Development Authority, tick.
Tick. Cotton Development Authority for the areas that are growing cotton, tick.
Tick.
Dairy, for us who have cows and want more milk, we are now diverting, moving away from having so many cows, and each cow is giving you 2 liters and 1 liter. Now, when these experts come and tell you how to feed your cow, how to nourish it, give it more water, let them not walk, And these are
Can't the extension worker under the ministry give
which
you that?
extension workers?
Agriculture extension workers.
Didn't World Bank and IMF so many years ago remove those extension
They are
workers?
there now.
Even if they are there, I don't think some of the information we get.
PDM
So NAD stick.
NADS.
Those are the people who are also helping you with the.
No, for me, I was on Direct Development
Okay,
Authority.
okay, Direct
NADS,
Development
I
Authority.
don't know. Maybe
NADS.
Mukitale will talk for NADS
Hey.
because I don't know what.
Hey,
Yes, the Uganda National Roads Authority,
UNRA.
UNRA.
Mm.
I think to me, I would save that institution. Those of us who travel up country to some of the areas which were hard to reach, I know I've done it in some hours.
Honorable Mkitale says they are not the ones who actually do the roads. They actually use Chinese engineers.
So
they,
if-
they are a mere
but
procurement entity,
at least for me,
which
I
can
see,
be done in the ministry. That's what
for
his
me, I
argument
see
is.
UNRA. Why wasn't the ministry doing it before? If they can do it, why weren't they doing it before? And why do we expect that they are going to do it? I'm not saying maybe they won't, but if they never did it before, why do we think they will do it now? Actually, one, they will not. For me, that is my view. At least I've seen that, with all due respect to UNRA, I don't blame them for the potholes we have in Kampala because that is KCCA. But we've seen that roads, some of them leading us out of Kampala, these roads have been done. I've seen, I think, whether they procure and, with all due respect to Honorable Mukitale, at least they procure. And we are seeing some change in this country. There are roads.
All right. All right. Honorable Mkitale.
First of all, we are lucky that President Museveni is still around and is handling this matter with kids' glove, because I've called them. I've called blackmail.
Does that make us lucky?
We are hosting. Citizens are held hostage by criminals. I can tell if it was another person, and he puts a commission of inquiry, and puts an inquest, and he say, you came here, on a UTC bus, you go back on a UTC bus, and the IGG comes and says, give us your lifestyle audit, and tells us, you civil servant who has been supplying the ministry, if you're found guilty, and that's why me with National Dialogue, I will give them an amnesty for 6 months. You declare, I want to go with my loot, we let you go. But if we take you through the scrutiny and find out that you did not qualify, that you came because of technical know-how, that you have been an inside trader, you would be punished. Everybody would run away. That's what Magufuli did. Whoever had fake papers, whoever ran away. And even now, the madam is doing it. That's one way. So
Kenya is also moving into that direction. I saw communication to the parliament that they will be discussing.
Now I'm giving the stick.
The
Please
issue
don't
of
think that, in a country, accountability, you can postpone it, but it will still come. But I was giving you the other carrot part. Please, go when you are still safe. Voluntarily, go without asking for any pay. After all, there is more and more in private sector. The other point I wanted to say was that, before I got to my substantive submission, was that in Kenya, whereas we privatized, they remained with the boards, the regulators remained. All those grains produce what remained there. The dairy things remained. There is a regulator in Kenya. Now, for us, we privatized without any regulation, and that's where we got it wrong. Now, for me, as an economist and a planner at that, I cannot forget, we are in a census week. And my sister has just touched it, Honorable. We are just about to confirm that by the Vision 2040 target, we are 100 million population. Most of them young. We are struggling with poverty levels, still stuck at 39. We have failed to have a demographic dividend to make sure we move from peasantry. We are still stuck on land. So the problems are gigantic. So when we are now talking of the role of the state, when we are talking of restructuring, mergers and rationalization, we should be trying to save the little government money has in the direction of the gigantic problems we are having, which we have so well put down. You know, we don't even have, we have failed to go for the health insurance. Social protection, we talk of this money given by some donor. Eh? You know, I was once an auditor in the ISO system, the PMS you talked about. The first thing we expected in 2014-15 by the Public Service Ministry was to do a QMS audit of all government agencies, ministry departments and agencies in terms of processes and mandates. That's what we do in the early training of the QMS and the TQM. So that we know what is that government should be doing. Because at the same time, we're supposed to review the role of the state after 25 years of privatization, of liberalization. Then we say, this one was a mistake.
All right.
We need a cooperative bank. We need an agriculture bank. We need a housing bank. We need a long-term funding. That is the approach we should have taken.
All right.
But now,
let's take
by the trend of events, now what we are discussing has no semblance, no iota of what the national mission, what we intended to do. It has reduced because of the homosexuals saying no money, because of the loans, debt servicing being too much, because of the URA failing to collect taxes. We are in a panic mode. It is no longer a proactive, preventive.
All right.
Dr. Vyargawa is called Mboa management.
All right. We'll come to you, Dr. Jessica, for your final take as we come to the end of this show. Please.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. For my parting shot, I want to re-echo the fact that as a country, we need to review some of the decisions we have made, particularly concerning the provision of weather and climate services in this country. And I have demonstrated to you and our listeners that we were once in the leading position regarding the transformation of the meteorological services. But now you see we took a step forward, and now we are taking 3 steps backwards. And this is well hinged in our regional and international obligations. And so I want to appeal to the president of this country to give us a platform, invite the management and the board of Uganda National Meteorological Authority, so that we can comprehensively explain, to support his decision, to provide him with more information so that he makes his decision with a wide spectrum of facts.
All right.
So thank you very much, Ken.
Honorable Sheila Kawamara, your parting shot as we come to the end of this show.
I think I would advise, I know this is unsolicited advice, but I still would give it that
you're a national leader.
Yes, that our leaders, our members of parliament, and including our president, they need to really sit and seriously think through the decision of whether rationalizing or eradicating or malfunctioning, whatever, these agencies. And really, as a country, we still need them. We need them for a long haul. Whether you Coffee Development Authority, we need that coffee.
That one has been saved.
That has been saved. You can't save Coffee Development Authority when we as farmers depend on the rain and depend on because now if I planted this season, I planted just like a few acres, simply because I did not know whether it will rain or what. Yet when they assured us that it's going to rain,
you did plant. I
planted, but not as many as I would have planted had I got more information. So these agencies, we need them.
All right. I'm afraid time is not our best ally.
So
very quickly.
She's saying we need UNMA.
The national comprehensive national dialogue is the way to go. Let's make sure that comprehensively in the whole country we look at what is that we need and what is that we don't need. What is that can be done by government? What we call it in terms of we say what can we make and what can we buy in procurement, so that what we make we do it as government and what we cannot make we outsource to private sector.
All right.
Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. An extra hour of analysis and discussion of the topical issues of the week.